Imagine it's the height of the Cold War. Tensions are sky-high between the United States and the Soviet Union. Both sides are desperately trying to figure out what the other is up to. For the Americans, the biggest question is, what's happening behind the Iron Curtain? How many bombers does the USSR have? Where are their missile sites? Getting this information was a matter of national survival, but existing spy planes were too slow and flew too low. They were easy targets for Soviet defenses. The US needed a ghost, a plane that could fly so high and so fast that it was practically invisible, untouchable. This need gave birth to one of the most legendary aircraft ever built, the Lockheed U-2, nicknamed the Dragon Lady. The story of the U-2 begins in the early 1950s at a facility known as the Skunk Works, Lockheed's legendary Advanced Development Division. The man in charge was the brilliant, almost mythical, aircraft designer Clarence Kelly Johnson. The CIA came to him with an impossible request: build a plane that could fly at 70,000 feet, well above the reach of Soviet fighter jets and surface-to-air missiles. It needed to have a range of thousands of miles to penetrate deep into Soviet territory, all while carrying a state-of-the-art camera system. Kelly Johnson and his team got to work. To achieve that incredible altitude, the plane had to be unbelievably light. The U-2 was essentially a massive glider with a powerful jet engine strapped to it. Its wings were long and thin, designed for maximum lift in the thin air of the upper atmosphere. Everything was stripped down to save weight. The fuselage was built from lightweight aluminum, and even the pilots wore special pressurized suits, basically early versions of what astronauts would later wear. Flying the U-2 was notoriously difficult. Pilots described it as balancing on a razor's edge. The margin between the plane's maximum speed and its stall speed at high altitude was incredibly narrow, sometimes less than 10 knots. They called this tiny window the coffin corner because straying outside of it, either too fast or too slow, could cause the fragile airframe to break apart. The camera it carried was a technological marvel for its time. It was a custom-built system designed by Edwin Land, the founder of Polaroid. This camera could take incredibly detailed, high-resolution photographs from over 13 miles up. From that altitude, it could capture objects on the ground as small as a person. The film it used was a special, ultra-thin, polyester-based film developed by Kodak, allowing a single roll to hold thousands of feet of film for long-duration missions. With the plane and its camera ready, the CIA began its top-secret overflights of the Soviet Union in 1956. The program was codenamed Project Ukriton. From bases in Europe and Asia, brave pilots would take off and fly daring, multi-hour missions deep into hostile territory. The initial results were breathtaking. For the first time, the US had a clear picture of what was happening inside the US. The U-2 photos revealed that the bomber gap, the fear that the Soviets had a massive fleet of long-range bombers, was a myth. They located secret military bases, nuclear facilities, and missile test sites. The intelligence gathered by the U-2 was invaluable, allowing President Eisenhower to make critical strategic decisions with confidence rather than fear and speculation. For 4 years, the U-2 flew with impunity. The Soviets knew they were being watched. Their radar would track this mysterious object flying at an impossible altitude, and they would scramble their best fighter jets in a futile attempt to intercept it. But the MiG fighters simply couldn't climb high enough. They would stall out thousands of feet below the cruising U-2. The Soviets also fired their surface-to-air missiles, but the early models lacked the range and guidance systems to hit a target so high and so far away. To the Kremlin, the U-2 was a phantom, a constant, frustrating reminder of their technological inferiority. Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev was furious. He felt humiliated, as if the Americans were thumbing their noses at him, flying over his country whenever they pleased. The invincibility of the U-2, however, was not destined to last forever. The Soviets were working feverishly to develop a new, high-altitude surface-to-air missile, the S-75DV, known to NATO as the SA-2 guideline. By 1960, these new missiles were becoming operational and deployed around key strategic sites. The CIA was aware of this development, and there was growing concern within the Eisenhower administration. Some officials argued that the overflights were becoming too risky and should be stopped. But the demand for intelligence was relentless. A new ICBM test site was suspected to be under construction near, and one last mission was approved to confirm its existence. This fateful mission was scheduled for May 1st, 1960, a major Soviet holiday. The pilot chosen for the flight was France's Gary Powers, one of the CIA's most experienced U pilots. His route was one of the most ambitious and dangerous ever planned. A 3,800-mile journey across the entire length of the Soviet Union, from Pakistan to Norway. Powers took off as planned, soaring into the stratosphere. 4 hours. The mission went smoothly. He flew over Soviet military installations, his camera capturing vital intelligence. But as he approached the industrial city of Sverdlovsk, his luck ran out. A Soviet S-2 missile battery was waiting. They had been tracking him. Suddenly, Powers saw a bright orange flash nearby, and his aircraft was rocked by a violent explosion. It wasn't a direct hit. A volley of missiles had been fired, and one exploded near the U-2's tail. The shockwave was enough to cripple the delicate aircraft. The wings snapped off, and the plane went into an uncontrollable, spinning dive. Powers struggled to eject. Due to the intense G-forces, he couldn't reach the self-destruct mechanism designed to destroy the camera and its precious film. He managed to bail out, parachuting down into the heart of the Soviet Union. He was captured almost immediately by bewildered locals. Back in Washington, a cover story was quickly put into motion. NASA announced that a weather research aircraft had gone missing over Turkey after the pilot reported oxygen difficulties. They assumed Powers was dead and the plane destroyed. But then came the bombshell. Khrushchev triumphantly announced that they'd shot down an American spy plane and, more importantly, they had the pilot alive and well. He even displayed the wreckage of the U-2 and parts of its camera for the world to see. The cover-up was blown. It was a massive international incident. President Eisenhower was forced to admit the truth. The United States had been conducting espionage flights over the Soviet Union for years. The incident torpedoed a crucial peace summit in Paris and dramatically escalated Cold War tensions. France's Gary Powers was put on a public show trial in Moscow, convicted of espionage, and sentenced to 10 years in prison. He would eventually be released in 1962, in a now famous spy swap on the Glienicke Bridge in Berlin, exchanged for the captured Soviet spy Rudolf Abel. But the era of U-2 overflights of the Soviet Union was over. The Dragon Lady's cloak of invisibility had been torn away. However, the U-2's story doesn't end there. The plane was so valuable that it continued to serve for decades, flying missions over Cuba during the missile crisis, Vietnam, and the Middle East. Upgraded versions of the U-2 are, incredibly, still in service with the U.S. Air Force today, a testament to Kelly Johnson's genius design. The legacy of the U-2 is complex. It was a marvel of engineering that provided critical intelligence, potentially preventing misunderstandings that could have led to war. But its discovery over the Soviet Union also created a diplomatic crisis that pushed the world closer to the brink. It is a powerful reminder of the high-stakes game of cat and mouse that defined the Cold War, a secret war fought not with armies, but with technology, intelligence, and incredibly brave pilots flying on the edge of space. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story of Cold War espionage fascinating, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most secret missions. Let us know in the comments what other classified stories you'd like to see uncovered. See you next time.